Where in 2025 is Spotify right now?
We actually had a big moment about a month ago in which we kind of reintroduced ourselves as an advertising business. I think just to talk about where we're going and where we are, I'll just take a little bit of a step back and talk about what Spotify has historically been known for as an advertising business, which is a great place to run audio ads and grow your brand and focus on upper funnel metrics. And that's great. That's what we've been known as. But as consumer evolution has changed with how people are using Spotify. We'll probably talk more about the focus on video and visual experiences. But as that has grown and evolved, we've started to evolve our advertising offering along with it in a few different ways. So for one, Spotify today is becoming a much more automated business. We are no longer just a direct business in which advertisers work with our sales team and book their media plans. Yes, we still offer that, but we launched the Spotify Ad Exchange so that advertisers can buy programmatically. And we've made a significant number of investments in Spotify Ads Manager so that advertisers who wish to be more hands on keyboard and have more control over their campaigns can buy with us directly in a biddable model through Spotify Ads Manager.
It seemed like in the whole industry, but correct me if I'm wrong, that it's just like subscriber growth as a revenue monetization channel for Spotify and the business wasn't enough. So we need to do some of that, but we need to like have advertising really be a key role in this. Is that a correct or incorrect sort of characterization of this?
So I would say yes, mostly correct, but I want to call out one thing, which is that we're not stepping away from subscriber growth. We have two goals: grow subscribers and grow ad revenue. And they're not necessarily competing because at the end of the day, about half of our audience is a free user. So there are some people that just like our free offering and aren't going to pay. And so that is the service. It's the free model in which our advertising business is, running and serving ads to people who aren't paying for that subscription. And then obviously for those who are paying, that's obviously we have different products and different offerings that are involved in that consumer experience. For those who aren't, though, that is where advertising plays a role. And there are some variances across markets, but it really is half if you look at our global figures. In terms of the podcast piece that you were calling out, it's still really important for us to support and to grow our podcast business. Absolutely. We do have some big owned and licensed podcasts like Amy Poehler, which was announced a couple of months ago. That is certainly, generating a lot of listens and streams, which is really exciting for our business. But we're also really trying to support that mid-tier of creators on our platform, make sure they're having a good experience. They can grow. They can find an audience on our platform too. And rather than doing, owned and exclusive deals with these creators, we're coming up with ways for them to monetize and make a living on our platform. One of which that was recently announced earlier this year is our Spotify Partner Program that allows them to upload video content and incentivizes them to do so.
In terms of like the appeal of a podcast, and maybe I'm like a little bit biased because I host a podcast, I host a few, but
that's what we're on right now.
Yeah. When you kind of sell these and you sort of position that piece of the advertising business, versus all the things you do and sell ads on, like what is the appeal of that? Like how do you sell that? Like I always think like the great thing about a podcast is that it's kind of somewhat passive. You can go do your workout, you can go, run work at the gym, you can drive in a car, you can do all these things. But meanwhile, you're just like logging time and hours, getting to know the hosts and the guests and the people behind it. And that breeds a lot of trust in a way that watching a, 30-second video or ad might not. That serves other purposes, but it's like a lot of like relationship building with the audience at the form. Is that how you kind of sell it, where people kind of like get involved in podcasts, or do you sell it differently?
Oh, 100%. You're spot on. I think that like some of the stats are incredible. People are spending over 50 minutes a day listening to podcasts. That's a lot of time. And I know you use the word passive, but I actually wouldn't use the word passive. I mean, it can be on in the background, but people are so engaged. They're watching a podcast or listening to a podcast because they, it's their news source. They want to know what's going on in the world, or they're learning something. Like I've listened to podcasts to learn a new language or brush up on one before I was like going on a travel. People, feel like they have these like intimate relationships with the podcast host. And if they haven't seen a video yet, they might have this whole idea in their head of what they look like and think of them as, a friend. But it's very much like this is where the culture is happening, right? Like something might happen in the world for 5 minutes, like a sports game, for example. So 2 hours of a game. And then you come on Spotify and you have hours and hours and hours of conversation about that. So it's this like elongated cultural conversation and how people are keeping up with culture across so many different topics and genres. So longer said than what you said, but spot on in terms of that like deep engagement. And it makes you feel good.
You always heard like, oh, when people would watch like the Oprah Winfrey show, they felt like they got to know Oprah, or she was in your house every afternoon, and people felt like that was some of her appeal. Like it was like she was your best, friend. And so have we sort of extended that from there was like a few celebrities, and we've sort of, I don't know, like democratized that, whether that's podcasters, whether that's creators, influencers, we've sort of made it more accessible to people.
When I just think about the heyday of Oprah compared to where we are now, everyone is consuming so much more content on so many more platforms. So the Oprahs of the world are fewer and far in between. Like that's just the reality of how much we're all consuming now, in comparison to them. That said, the people that are forming, the people meaning podcasters who are forming these communities and these fans, they're real deep communities and fans. That's why so many podcasters, I don't know if you've done any, I'm sure you have, are doing live podcasts and filling up rooms and massive audiences who want to see them in person, just like a version of Oprah, back in the day. So I think those are just a few examples, but 100%, I think it's very, very similar where, people are like so ingrained into these conversations and they're forming some sort of, relationship or intimacy or closeness with the host because they're listening for such extensive periods of time, throughout their weeks and days.
What was going on at Spotify during like pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know if this is directly related to the pandemic or not. To be transparent, I was not at Spotify during this time, but I think like just the branches that Spotify took coming out of the pandemic to offer more types of content, more formats. I mean, it was like a little over a year ago we announced the audiobooks, which Spotify, didn't have pre-pandemic. But now we have this like significant catalog. I think it's like 330,000 audiobooks on our platform. So, it's like the more engagement, the more people were tuning in and subscribing to all of these different types of channels and platforms during the pandemic because we didn't have anything else to do. So everyone was just using digital streaming services even more and even more, opened up more opportunity for Spotify to just take different avenues and try different approaches with regard to the consumer offering. And I think audiobooks is one example of those.
When you think of like all of the offerings on Spotify and you're talking to advertisers and just like understanding the mix and where they should play, and there's different categories. I mean, we mentioned podcasts and audiobooks, and of course there's music and there's other things, but there's also like different tiers, which also feels like a very much like an influencer creator type tiering, right? You have your like, really big celebrity type influencer types. You have this sort of mid tier. You have sort of emerging really small micro, and there was always this debate on like, okay, should you like go hire Kim Kardashian, expensive, big name, well known, or should you get 30 other smaller people, aggregate them and create a Kim Kardashian like effect, but maybe with not like the one big check you write? So how do you kind of advise that? How do people think about that? How are people thinking about that now?
On Spotify or off Spotify, there's always that like triangle, right? Of the Kim Kardashians are at the top, and then you have the mid tier, and then there's just like the reach and frequency play that's, at the bottom of the triangle. If we're thinking about an influencer strategy, there are offerings on Spotify to do all of those. A lot of it ultimately just depends on the brand's goal. I would say that if we're going to talk kind of like bottom up in that, we have genre targeting for advertisers. We have the ability through our programmatic offering, through Spotify Ads Manager, for you to take your audiences and find them here. Obviously, creating lookalikes, all those kind of foundational tools and abilities that digital advertising platforms offer to help reach the right audiences at the right time. But I think that like just knowing the sheer consumption that's happening in podcasts, putting podcast advertising in your media plan is a no-brainer for that reach and frequency play. And that will ultimately be, again, genre targeting or interest targeting, or if your brand, is aligned with a certain target audience who's really tuning into like true crime, you should certainly be looking at different podcasts that you can target based on, the audience you're looking to target, and you're still associating yourself with podcasters and with creators, but maybe not the most known ones, but the ones that are smaller and still have these like niche and hyper engaged communities. And then you have host reads or baked in ads and other ways to engage the larger creators and podcasters that might be more well known. We've had some, really exciting wins. I mentioned the Amy Poehler podcast earlier. Uber Eats just did a really funny and creative campaign through, a host read in which there was obviously a script and it was kind of baked into the ad. And so those are more of the campaign moments that a brand would invest in to get maybe like bigger awareness or, bigger uptick in their brand based on a certain campaign or message that they're looking to land. Whereas that always on podcast ads play would be kind of happening throughout the year as the supplement to those larger, higher investment moments.
Well, and are you trying to get like, I don't know if it's like podcast advertising like as a like a line item in some kind of budget mix, and if people have it as a line item, they're going to not many people are possible. Like you're one of the few major players in it. And is that, or is it like, no, we're trying to sort of say like, we should be a part of other line items that are general, whether it's digital, whether it's, I don't know if you consider it social or not, whether you consider something else. And it's not just like you're trying to expand this one line item to be like, no, it needs to be in your plan, this line item, put it in. Or it's no, just like we're a piece of something else, and we're going to go compete with Google and Meta and anywhere else that there might be, competition for dollars.
I think Spotify has historically been bucketed in the audio/radio bucket, which is a shame because that's not how people are using it. It's not like only in my car do I put on Spotify, right? It's like in your pocket when you're on your way to work, it's connected TV. Like we're literally with you everywhere you go. And so there's two quote unquote buckets or line items. And then I actually want to talk about like a higher level strategy as well. But I would say digital, absolutely. We are incremental to media plans. We know that a lot of advertisers are going to keep investing in Google and keep investing in Meta, and they should be if they're seeing results there. But what we see is that when advertisers add Spotify to their media mix, there's incrementality across the funnel, from reach to attention to engagement to purchase intent to sales. So we're not, duplicating the results that you're getting with your media mix. We're adding incremental value across the funnel. So in the digital category, absolutely. The second piece and the bucket that we're not as associated with, but should be, is video. If you think about like, the example that I just gave around in your pocket, on your phone, people are also switching throughout their day from audio to video on Spotify, and they're holding their phones more. So video consumption is up 44% year over year. The reason why I call that out is what we also see in terms of effectiveness is that advertisers who use audio and video together in their campaigns on Spotify also see incremental effectiveness across the funnel. And it makes sense because if you are an advertiser and you are only limiting your campaign dollars to audio ads or to music ads, there are just certain people that you're not reaching or certain formats that you're not leveraging to the fullest. So we say, think of us as like the overall value of our platform, not just, oh, this audio budget or, oh, this radio budget. Like I can talk much more about where we kind of sit in association with competition, but it's like people are spending so much time here, over 2 hours a day on Spotify. And as we talked about with podcasts, they are so deeply engaged, and that attention is absolutely translating to advertiser results. So think of us as a digital platform with video, and maximize your chances for success by giving us the audio assets and giving us the video assets, and let us do the work of serving those based on our, machine learning and AI to the person who's consuming audio and to the person who's consuming video at the right time in which they're doing so. One fun fact with video is that we only serve video ads when the person is 100% in view, when that ad is 100% in view. I'm holding my hand up, pretending it's a phone.
How do you think about the competition with Apple overall and podcasting really big, doesn't get as big as that, really deep pockets. Spotify is big, but not the size of Apple. So how do you just think about that and the head-to-head competition?
I mean, there's Sirius, there's iHeart, there's Pandora, but we're also competing with TikTok and Snap and Pinterest because we aren't we I think it would almost be easier if we were just competing with like a Sirius and an Apple and a Pandora, because at least it would be like, oh, but it's a smaller subset. But because we have the, kind of dual nature of like screenless moments, in-screen moments, audio, video, podcast, music, audiobooks, like our catalog is so enormous that I think our competition is broader. So two ways in which we think about that. One is our catalog is absolutely unmatched. We have billions of playlists. We have millions of podcasts. We have hundreds of thousands of audiobooks. We have, millions of songs. So based on this extensive catalog that we have across all of Spotify, we have a really unique ability to truly understand our users and know not just what Ben likes right now, but based on the signals that we get from Ben and what he listens to and watches, and based on the fandoms that he subscribes to, we know what he's going to love next. And so that same, experience of the content that we serve you to help you discover more things is also powering our ads business. And that translates, of course, to effectiveness because we're getting the right ads in front of you. But it also translates to just a really positive consumer experience, which is my next point, the positive consumer experience. I think with what's going on in the world right now, there's like so many articles out there around brain rot and algorithm fatigue. And I find myself, I'm like scrolling and scrolling, scrolling and swiping and swiping. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm consuming so much content and I can't remember any of it. But none of that happens on Spotify. Like you're never like, oh, I really need a mental break from music and podcasts. I'm going to delete Spotify from my phone for a few days to get a little break. It's the opposite. It makes you feel good. You're learning something. You're emotionally engaged. And so I think we have a leg up on competition because of our unmatched catalog and the unique behavior between listening and watching. But then on the flip side of just like the overall feeling and time spent on our platform, it's time well spent because people are raising their hand to listen to this content or watch this content, and it's a positive experience for them that doesn't make them feel like they've just wasted time.
Well, what did people think at Spotify about another kind of like high profile, I feel like viral moment, at least a number of people who sent me links about sort of Google Notebook LM and the ability to create like their audio overview feature, which is like basically creates a podcast on any topic. And it has like, you and like another guest like chatting about this and creating this, and it's all AI based. And people are saying like, wow, that actually does sound like a podcast.
I've heard
what
some
was it? Have you heard some of that? I had a number of people who sent me, I think even one of my, I'm also a partner in a venture capital firm, Deep Venture Partners. One of my partners said, here's a podcast on our venture capital firm. And I was like, really? What's that? He just said it to me, and I was like, "What did you create this?" And I think that's when I first heard about it. But it was like, what was the thought process there of just like, wow, AI could make an entire podcast and have a conversation, and what was the thought internal at Spotify?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had conversations specifically about Notebook LM in particular. I've used that product, so I know what you're talking about. But I think as a company, AI has always been a part of Spotify's story. It's always been a balance of like that human curated editorial, like our, top playlist that, and everyone kind of checks in on Fridays when they're updated. And they've kind of become these like central parts about culture. And that human curation and expertise is certainly not going away. But simultaneously, we've also been investing a ton in AI, both in back-end AI to improve the experience, but also in consumer features like AI DJ and AI playlists, where you literally have an AI voice that is promoting songs and offering you new music and helping you discover new music based on your listening behavior. So I think you can expect Spotify to absolutely continue to innovate in the AI world. And I think it's super exciting. Obviously, I don't know the future of AI. I wish I did, because I would probably be very successful if I could tell what all of that was going to look like in 5 years. But I do know that AI will play a very heavy hand in Spotify's future, paired with that like human curation that we are based off of. And then I also think audio will play a huge role in the future of AI in general. I mean, the example that you just gave is, an AI platform that is producing podcasts. So I think like when we think 6 months ahead or 2 years ahead, it'll be really interesting to see how much people can engage with podcasts or audio AI experiences to get stuff done in life. There's a lot on, agentic AI and other things that are rolling out that are maybe more service based. And I think, yeah, there could be a future there in the industry, or even on Spotify. I'm not too sure where that will be going for Spotify in general, but I just know it'll be a big push for us, of course.
I always get questions about starting in a podcast and like, how do you get started? And particularly if you want to start and like, not just have a podcast, but you want to build something, right? You want to be able to monetize it. You want to be able to become a business. You want to be able to become like, not like a sort of a time sink, but like a value creator. Do you have any sense of just like what your advice is for those folks? Maybe it's a little bit outside your like normal purview of like just advertising platforms, but just from being around it a lot, what would you advise someone that wants to be emerging, wants to come up and wants to be really successful at that, but they're like, let's say they're starting today. What would you advise them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the same approach I would tell anyone who wants to be a creator on any platform, which is like, what do you like? What is relevant to you? What is something that you can keep a conversation about, talk about, and start building your audience and listening to them. I mean, that's a very broad answer, but I think on Spotify, I've been thinking a lot lately about even just like Substacks and these like niche culture, communities. I'm subscribing to more Substacks by the day, and those are having a bit of a moment. And I think about with Spotify's like, no matter your interest, there is a podcast for you. And so I think if someone is looking to be a podcaster, kind of get started and find their community, of course, we have Spotify for creators, where we have resources and best practices and things like that to get them started. But a lot of it is just trial and getting the podcast posted. I would absolutely suggest supplementing it with a video, because not everyone is just listening. Some people are watching. So that's a way to expand your reach and opportunity to get seen and heard. And then really respond to what the audience is asking for and leaning into. But I truly think that no matter the topic, I think that people are getting just really creative, and there is a community that wants to hear more and see more with podcasts. And you can certainly find your community on Spotify or through podcasting in general.
What are some things that you think Spotify will be doing 3 years from now, 5 years from now, that you're not doing now? Where is all of this headed?
I'm really excited about the creative opportunity on Spotify. I think that where, I've worked at Amazon, I worked at Meta for a while. I think there's, of course, creative opportunity on a lot of different platforms, but Spotify was literally built on the back of the biggest artists in the world. And so, I think like now that we're becoming a more visual platform too, and not just audio, I think if I was a brand, I would be so excited to think like, how can I launch my marketing campaign in a way that is uniquely Spotify, or embracing both of these formats together on Spotify. The other reason, and to, better answer your question, where are we going? Like, I think that, the Wrapped campaign that happens every year on Spotify is this whole cultural moment. It started as like this small marketing campaign, and now it's not even just a marketing campaign. It is something that every, consumer or user of Spotify is looking forward to every year. And so many other brands and advertisers have created their own versions of it. And I bring up Wrapped because at the end of the day, that is rooted in like the unique insights that Spotify has about people's listening behavior, and people want to share that. Like, they're proud to say that they're in Taylor Swift's 0.000% of listening, or, the same for podcasts and so forth. And so I think when I think about the future of Spotify and the ads business in particular, I get excited about serving up more of those insights to advertisers. so that they can better understand how people are consuming and how people are streaming, and they can therefore come up with ideas and the right creative assets to reach people on Spotify based on our unique first party insights and trends. And then, of course, leveraging, more visual formats, because we'll certainly continue to invest in those.
What is the worst and best advice that you've gotten on the way?
The best advice I received it was from Gary Vaynerchuk. I used to work at VaynerMedia, and I had all of these ideas and I would always run them by him, and I felt very, entrepreneurial in some ways, but I was really tough on myself. Like, oh, like, well, I don't want to do this. This person did, or this brand already exists. And he was like, Bridget, stop trying to be the first. Just focus on being the best or the most creative. He was like, if you keep waiting for this big idea to be the first at doing something, you might not ever do it. But there are a lot of ideas already out there, and what you can focus on is just executing in the best way. And then he used himself as an example. He's like, I didn't create the first agency, I didn't create the first wine business. And so I thought that was really great advice, is just like trying to be the best about at what you're passionate about, rather than kind of sitting and waiting for some light bulb moment to go off to have this original idea that I haven't had. So that's the best advice. And then the worst advice, this is definitely a tricky one. I think if it's been bad advice, I've probably tried to forget it. But I think what comes to mind in answering this question is like, you know, everyone's always heard like, oh, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. Like, it's all about having confidence. And I don't disagree with that. I do think like confidence is really important. But I think for me, I know myself well enough that if I don't know the work, if I haven't done my homework and am knowledgeable about what I'm about to present or speak about, I can't sell it in. Like, my confidence comes from having rolled up my sleeves and knowing what I'm doing or working toward. And I'm not someone that feels confident or comfortable in a room if I'm asked one question and I know I can't answer a layer deeper than that. And then on the flip side, if I'm not passionate about it, or if I'm trying to, sell in a creative idea that I actually don't think is good or interesting, I probably won't sell it in very well because my heart's not in it. And so, again, I don't think it's like maybe the perfect answer to the worst advice, but it's not something that works for me.
Bridget Evans, thank you so much for perspective. Obviously, on Spotify, where it's headed, you're the global head of business marketing. Interesting as an advertising platform, as a business, and also just interesting as a way and an opportunity, I think, across video or many other things to see where the future of just reaching people, awareness, advertising conversion is headed. So thank you for joining us on Branded.
Of course, Ben. Thanks so much for having me.